Good morning, evening, afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, whatever time you're tuning in the program called, well, normally I'm doing the program called What's Going On here at allpointstv.com. I'm George Moss, and we're doing a special edition this afternoon. We have with us in the studio Mr. Darwin Jiles, and Darwin, I want to thank you for coming in again.
Thank you.
And Darwin comes in every once in a while and gives us an update of what's going on in urban America. And so we are here to learn from what he has to say and also to join in the conversation. And you can always reach us here at your leisure at allpointstv.com. And the phone number here is 248-247-5846. And we hope you will stay tuned to all the programs here at allpointstv.com because the people that are here are working very hard to earn your trust. And believe me, they're putting a lot of time into it from behind the scenes. And when we come before the cameras, we've done a lot of things before that in preparation for it. Darwin, I want to thank you again for coming in.
Thank you. And
whenever you come in, I always look forward to it because I know it's going to be something new.
Yeah, I think the last time I came in, was it before or after my election as ethnic vice chair? I don't know if it was before.
I think you were still running at that time.
Okay, it was coming up into the actual election. Yeah, it's been an honor, and it's always an honor to come into All Points and just share with and have this interviewing session now to discuss a lot of critical and very important matters concerning Flint. Of course, the victory of Dr. Karen Weaver last night as mayor of Flint. Congratulations, and especially just learning from our past, learning from our past to make sure we can have that brighter future that we're all aiming to have, and more importantly to discuss state politics as well and how things are being affected, and so there's a lot of critical conversations and topics we can discuss today, and I'm looking forward to getting into those things.
Okay, let's start off talking about your election. I think the last time we were talking about you're running for office.
Correct.
So let's refresh our members about the office you're running for.
Yeah, I won 60% of the vote, Michigan Republican Party's ethnic vice chair. Special thanks to Reverend C. O'Brien, who definitely came in and helped and gave an enormous endorsement. National Committeeman Dave Ijema, and so many other great people who've helped me at the grassroots level, just throughout the state. And just more importantly to those who were willing to see through the lies, the smear tactics, and just political nonsense that came out of that campaign. But it was definitely something in which God really allowed that to happen, where the victory was in my favor, and I'm just appreciative of that. It seems like everything they could was thrown at me, but I stood flat-footed. I stood and I told the truth and stood on principle. I stood on my morals, my values, and in fact, a good friend of mine, Shane Hernandez, stated I was probably one of the only candidates who won my election the night before throughout the caucuses, throughout the Lansing Center, because from what I understand, it was stated that my speeches were that convicting and refreshing. But definitely I'm not an establishment-backed Republican, and I'm not an establishment-backed Democrat. Stand on principles, values, biblical values. So I'm somewhere up in there in which where I identify politically. So I'm just happy to being able to have that victory and stand on the things I've done since then. We hit the ground running within the first 6 months. We've recorded a documentary on the urban city. Reverend C. O'Brien and Naren Mbweya, she was able to help out with that as well, and so many other activists throughout the state. And for those who don't know, Naren, she's an international Syrian activist, so she stood up for the righteous cause for the Syrian people, as we send our prayers for them as well. So we've done a lot, just basically building up the Tea Party and conservative support, definitely bridging over swing voters or those who consider themselves to be moderates, and just trying to uphold the Republican platform in the sense of values, not just political alliance, not following the Democrat or Republican Party just because you have a D or an R, but holding candidates very accountable for what they stand on. And I think the victory with even Karen Weaver, I think, was very important because she stood for Christian values, ethics, and then the Constitution was a very big thing. So that platform, I think we've been able to build, and now we have an opportunity right now to make sure we can build on the heritage of even Woodrow Stanley being a state rep that was termed out within, the state of Michigan, also being he was a former mayor. And of course, I being one of the main critics of Woodrow Stanley in the past, I've learned a lot being elected and how important it is to be an ethnic and minority and being in power. That's very important when you look at other places like Pontiac. Majority of the city is of ethnic value or background, and these values are within the community, but in the leadership, those values are lacking, and more importantly, there was decisions made within Pontiac to sell off assets in which was probably long-term even worse than what Flint has experienced, and it could have gotten worse. But now we have an opportunity as Americans to stand up within these areas to take our future by the reins and not only hold the current mayor accountable for those things in which they basically spoke on, but more importantly, just to make sure we're governing ourselves as residents, as a governing people, being governed as well, to make sure we're praying for Dr. Karen Weaver, to making sure we're supporting her in the community like we're supposed to, and not expecting a savior to come in, because we know the attacks will come, and she's definitely not taking that stance. But more importantly, we have to do our part as a people to support Dr. Karen and not being that savior mentality because she's probably going to face more criticism than probably any other mayor. I mean, when you look at Dane Walling being able to still get 40+% of the vote after what happened here in Flint, it's just crazy. It's insane. And it really speaks to the political culture here. And so we have an opportunity right now to purge political corruption and give Flint a positive note and a very bright future if we walk what we talk, and if we do by principle, by the Constitution, and just by morals and ethics and values that are going to better everybody here. And I think we're in that position to do that. Appreciating where we've been and going forward to have built a brighter future, and that's very important.
You said Dr. Karen Weaver.
Correct.
She's a doctor? Dr.
Karen Weaver, correct.
This is a degree doctor you're talking about?
Dr. Karen Weaver, she's a clinical psychologist. She's, she basically has pretty much throughout our campaign, she's made that very clear, as far as her skill and academic level, from what I understand. And yeah, she's very qualified to be mayor. I think she's a neutral person starting out with this. And yeah, I mean, I think right now that's pretty much what we're looking forward to seeing. Of course, I am with Flint, Michigan being my hometown as well.
I'm looking forward to what she can do. I'm looking to see what we can do to turn the urban politics around, and maybe this can be a standard bearer to do that here and be a shining light elsewhere.
Correct.
Because I'm aware of what is happening in these urban communities and the lack of services they're getting on all levels, both the local, state, and the federal level, as a matter of fact. So what role did you play in that campaign?
Well, as far as the campaign, I mean, I pretty much early on gave an early endorsement simply because of knowing her business and, again, academic background. A woman who holds a PhD, she's very a learned individual. She will learn quickly, I believe, politics. But more importantly, again, it was more of looking at I was a part of Darrell Buchanan's campaign when they first started out, and being that I seen the politics early on. I mean, I can go all the way back to even Don Williamson, running. I mean, as far as being politically involved, again, I helped with Woodrow Stanley, as my uncle Charles Winfrey, when I was just a little boy. Even though as I got older, my politics and policies differed greatly in certain areas and aspects, but we have far more in common, the black community being conservative and being Christian, than we do as far as being divided. So I've been able to gain a lot of experience with multiple campaigns and just being involved, but just being able to stand in the gap and let the people know really who they should vote for, and to research who they should vote for, and being informed and voter. I think that's very, very important to push that.
Yeah, I'm outside the city. I live in the township, but I'm not. Now, has Karen run for office before?
No, she's fairly. I mean, like I said, she is someone I consider to be very neutral as far as representing everybody. I really do think she's the person to try to help heal the lot of the corruption here, and even a lot of the breakdowns and barriers. I do think she will try to give it her best shot to do those things, and to not get corrupted and to not get involved into a lot of politics that are really just at this point, it's just useless in Flint. But being a part of just being able to early on endorse her and standing as a Republican standing candidate, that was very risky on my part, but it was very, you know, if you know myself, I've always stood for principle and the person more than anything. Here it is, you have a Republican governor who's raising taxes and done everything that they would consider a progressive or a liberal to do. So, you know, you can't be hypocritical on any aisle. You have to be willing to stand up for what's right. And a candidate that's going to stand up for what's right on positions. And again, not having a savior mentality, I do believe this is a step in the right direction, being we take advantage of this opportunity. Again, govern ourselves correctly, to be involved, to be informed, and then continue that on. I think that's very important.
Yeah, I want to just tell the listeners that what Darwin is referring to is that this is a Democratic town. This is a stronghold for the Democratic Party. So when you speak out as a Republican for a candidate, that puts the candidate in some jeopardy. I definitely understand that, having been here for all of these years. Well, I'll tell you something. We're both conservatives. I think a lot of persons think that we automatically going to endorse the Republican candidate. But some of those persons, you know, I don't endorse them because they're Republicans.
Correct.
I'm a conservative, and I look at the politics of the candidates. And sometimes it's rare, but sometimes the Democratic candidate is more conservative than the Republican candidate.
Correct.
And I make a decision based upon that. So what do you have, what's happening on the state level?
Well, see, on the state level, and this is a great opportunity to discuss this concerning with this campaign, because since being elected, you would think, being that, I think one of the terms you coined was one of the hardest working men in politics, being I went into the Republican Party not needing their hand, not needing their resources, you would think that they would have put a budget behind me. They actually did the opposite. They actually, once I was able to, you know, designate where certain parts of my budget would go and things like that, they actually came back and probably pulled one of the most dirtiest tricks probably in politics, and this is under the chairwoman of Ronna Romney, basically withholding a majority part of my budget. Literally, probably just, you can say stolen would probably be the correct term. It was just a completely backdoor deal, something that they knew I was the idea presenter of an idea and a proposal, and they knew from the very start I didn't want that to come out of my budget. But yet and still, the backdoor politics, and you're talking about within your own Republican Party, that you're finding people who are willing to marginalize you, to try to slow you down, and to try to in some way, shape or form to compromise your position. So, you know, at the state level, I would say the Republican Party has a very, very slim chance of gaining any ground far as with the minority community, simply because, and I think Brandon Dillon would probably do a better job with that, being a people person, not discussing politics or anything like that, or any policy, but just on the people and relationship building model. He tends to be someone that'll deal with the people and be of the people, and Ronna Romney is really for the elite. She's for the special interests. So and honestly, it was almost disheartening to experience that, because I went in with a heart to help and a heart to work with whoever I could. But when someone, you know, literally takes part of your budget to, you know, against your will and against your approval, and it's in writing, you can prove it, there's like no misunderstanding, it's very clear, and even compromise you when the event happened to exclude you from being at the event with other conservative leaders, it's very clear kind of what their agenda is for the ethnic vice chair.
What would be the motivation? I'm trying to get some sense of what
part of the motivation is you have a Ronna Romney cartel being set up here. So many people have viewed me as being one of the leading conservatives, especially amongst the urban community, and I'm not an establishment-backed person. So I pretty much do what I want to do. I vote for who I want to vote for. I back who I want to back based on the will of the people and what's right and what's wrong and ethics and values. So basically, looking at the platform and looking at the Constitution, biblical morality and things like that, those are the type of candidates I would normally support, whereas these elitists are not supporting those type of candidates. More importantly, they're only for the Jeb Bushes, the Scott Walkers, those type of people. Correct, and they would do the best they can to go in and infiltrate, you know, whether it's Wendy Day having the whole Ted Cruz position, or you have individuals trying to infiltrate the actual Ben Carson's campaign, being that I've had a position with even Dr. Ben Carson's campaign. So you got to understand, those are two things in which I've noticed just how politics can work even within your own party. And it is so divisive on the Republican side. I wouldn't recommend any ethnic minority to join a political party, period, unless it's on principle. The people locally are following those principles that you value, and that things are held accountable, because you have a lot of hypocritical, political decisions being made right now, and people are not backing their platform of the Republican Party. Here it is, you can have a Snyder who can raise, taxes. And don't get me wrong, I had a serious respect for Snyder, being he's in business. I'm from business. I respected the business acumen Governor Snyder had until I seen it being used for crony capitalism. Then I seen how and why Republicans have such a bad name, why they have such people have such resentment towards the Republican brand. And it's not because evangelical Christians at the base of the party. It's more at the establishment, Jeb Bush's, Scott Walker's, and every other person who backed amnesty or anything else. And amnesty, all these things are part of the reasons why, even you look at the bills that's being presented now to marginalize our Second Amendment rights. So many things are happening under Republican leadership. When you look at the increase in registration fees, when you look at how the Obamacare trade-off was handled here in Michigan, when you look at, you name it, the tax increases, everything else, people clearly voted this down, and then you turn around and have the House, and they come around and vote against that.
It's very offensive. It's very offensive what happened. We turned down this tax increase, and they could have found, I'm sure, within a $54 billion budget, they could have found some monies that were not being used efficiently, and then took it out of that source. What they did was to do the backdoor thing, which politicians always do, which is to raise the taxes on that which we had no voice in.
Yeah, and it's really an insult on the intelligence of the people, simply because, even worse, they're taking something that is really a need. The roads really do need to get fixed, and things do need to be upkept. But they're using that as hostage to promote a political agenda. And to me, that is the worst type of leadership to have. That is very unethical and immoral. I don't think that is how God intended government to be, of liberty and freedom, and where we elect our representatives in a republic and we do these type of things. Because once you start creating, it's kind of the saying, you never allow a good crisis go to waste. And, that's kind of what we're seeing now. And you've seen it big time with the roads being played like that. And it's just sad. And I, for one, like I said, I've started out from the grassroots working with both parties on both sides. So, I've worked at the grassroots level with Democrats, and I was elected as a Republican. But more importantly, I've stayed true to the values that I've had. And that's what I intend to continue to do. Yeah,
I look for a returning back to the source. We're not going to go anywhere in this country until we return back to the values that upon this country was founded. And those that want to maintain a strict constitutionalist outlook are the ones I would be willing to support. What do you think about the campaigns on the national level? You were saying Ben Carson. What do you think about Donald Trump?
Donald Trump, I think, is solid. I think he's business. I think he definitely will do what he says. I don't think he's like the grimy, slimy politicians from D.C. and Lansing for the most part. But I think he definitely, we really do owe him a thank you for standing up against the establishments of both parties, making a way and giving a voice to the grassroots. We've allowed the people have allowed they've allowed our voice to be marginalized and bought up and purchased so much that in politics, let's just be honest, if you're a little person, you probably don't mean that much. And that's not how this was intended, American government, from our founders. And but I do think it is a positive thing with him being in the race. I love the fact Ben Carson is involved. He's from Detroit. I was there from the time he announced to now. And he's good on how he stood on just making sure he stood up for the Bible and our Constitution, representing American traditional values. I think all those things are really good. And so that's pretty much where I stand with Trump. I think he could really get elected if he continues at the rate he's going. I would say that for all those who are conservative Christian leaders, they should stick together, not divide, because you do have some leaders, one good leader I know, and I have a lot of respect for, Katrina Pearson. She's attack Ben Carson pretty tough at times, and I've had to have one-on-one conversations and different discussions with her, and we've had an understanding. But a lot of
disagreement being what would be the things?
Well, some of the areas, of course, it's very hard, as David Ijima stated one time. It's very hard to attack Ben Carson, just because of his mild mannered personality and just how intelligent and brilliant he is, and just where he stands on principle, policy wise. But they could, whether it's how he negotiates, or whether it's how long he's been a Republican, or whether different things, and what it turns into is the same rhetoric we accuse Democrats of a lot of times. So here it is, just in politics, period, whether you Democrat or Republican, you get the rhetoric out the way, and you normally go to you discover the truth. So for me, standing on what I've started seeing people throwing at Carson, it's just more of they really didn't have anything to attack him with, but yet and still, this is an African American woman, at least multi-ethnic woman, and she is very well respected, but she's backing Donald Trump 100%. And I don't have a problem with that. In fact, I support both candidates. But you only give, those who are in favor of being against our Constitution and how the American traditional values more of leverage when you try to divide those two, because I don't think that that's the right way of going about it, especially within the urban community. I think we should support Dr. Ben Carson 100% and continue to back him. And I think we'll go good places from there. And another thing is, too, I think Hillary Clinton has come across very sharp. I think she's come across very polished. So a lot of people may have underestimated what they think she can do. And I think that's a very bad mistake on Republicans' part, to just think that they are just going to brush through this election. It's not going to happen. We're going to have to stand true to real issues, which is where, honestly, I'm most probably excited about Ted Cruz. I'm probably most excited about him as far as just in general, but I think Ted Cruz and Ben Carson probably be a winning ticket. I think Donald Trump and what he can do will help. And wherever he falls in line, I think it'll be positive regardless. But I think it wouldn't even happen. You could not get Ben Carson elected, or probably Ted Cruz, if you didn't have Donald Trump. Because from what I've experienced in politics is that the establishment on the Republican side has been so divisive, but they've infiltrated so well, and they've been able to get in and put strategically people places, and it's very challenging to defeat the establishment. But I think Trump and Carson has did a pretty good job at it.
I'm looking forward to that campaign. I'm a Trump supporter, and I wouldn't have any problem with the Trump-Carson ticket. I think it'll be a very good ticket, very strong ticket. And I'm a little sick of all of the insiders, Ted Cruz being the best of those persons, but I'm against insiders who've been in the Beltway.
Period, yeah.
And the fact that there are some things that let go on in terms of this Iran deal, I think that Ted Cruz and those other senators are running. I think that's a disqualifier as far as I'm concerned, because I saw what they did in terms of the unconstitutionality of the process they let prevail. I'm very upset about that. But he's the best of that lot. But I think we're looking at outsiders this time in 2016.
Correct. I mean, that's the only way. And that's why they've gained so much support. And you see the same thing here in Michigan. And it does, again, I have to emphasize, it really doesn't matter when it comes to the establishments, Democrat or Republican, because you see people locked out of the establishment and the elite on both sides. You really do. And those people have a voice. They have not fully been heard. And they're going to gravitate to people that are going to represent their values. And that's very, very important, for those people to do that. But 100%, I stand on the Christian conservative principles. I think that is the best way to govern a nation, a country, my state, my city, my schools, you name it. I think that is the best way. And history has proven that when we've gotten away from our biblical Judeo values, that is when we tend to get into trouble. And we begin to marginalize the values, and those are the very protectors of our, nation. Even if you look, and this is kind of a side note, but I just seen one of the most disturbing videos about school teachers, and I seen a guy bully. She may have been a substitute teacher or something on the internet. Have you seen that horrific video? And it angered me because I grew up in some rough parts of Flint, and I've come up in some rough parts, and I went to public schools, even alternative schools. And to be honest, I don't think I ever would let a teacher get bullied. I don't think I would ever let a woman get bullied, period, and to see that and nobody stood up, that to me said a lot about our young people and how they need to have morals and values, and they can't afford to be morally bankrupt. They can't afford to not see something that's wrong and do what's right. And honestly, it starts from our leaders. If our leaders don't represent that, then it's a problem.
Let me ask you about Ben Fields, the person that officer down in South Carolina in that classroom where he was coming in as a third rail.
Correct.
The teachers asked the student to comply with school policy, and then the administration came in and there was no compliance. And then Ben Fields, the officer, came in. What do you think about that situation?
Well, the thing about it is I've heard two different interviews about it, and I see some points from both sides. And I can probably say definitely it was excessive force, and it was wrong. It was just plain wrong from what I've seen an officer do. Of course, you never see the backgrounding circumstances around what led up to certain things, but as far as just the physical force and being a young lady, there was probably, I know for a fact there was another way of handling that where you didn't have to get so aggressive. I think sometimes too, and I've witnessed this dealing with, and I respect law enforcement 100%, but I think sometimes we've gotten desensitized to what excessive force is. We've gotten desensitized to how to, there was a time when I think we coached officers to be preventers of escalating situations. And I don't know sometimes whether it's just the heat of the moment, but the young lady clearly wasn't no threat, so she didn't have to get collared and pulled up out of a seat. I don't think that was really the right thing to do. So, personally, the way he did that, I wouldn't be surprised if he lost his job for that, because it's just, if that was my daughter, that would be one of them real touchy. That's the problem. And we can't deny that, but we can't allow people and race baiters to get involved with that either and try to make it a race issue. Or I think overall cops need to have continual training about different things, and we need to support our law enforcement, because if we don't, we have an anarchist type of lawless environment. And I think that is another thing that plays into that we're not discussing. And I've seen another activist on the other side who felt he didn't need to lose his job, and she gave some clear points about how we got to look at the family breakdown. These kids are they're not fearful of any authority. They're not scared of the police and all this other stuff. Not in the sense of a positive fear, and that's a problem. So you're going to continue to have these type of things when you have kids that's going to school. They have a lot of mental issues. They have a lot of emotional issues. They come from abused, broken homes. How can we expect them to even have what they need to have to go through public school? Public school is going to just be a place where a lot of bad things are going to happen, and we need to be more equipped as a society to deal with these issues. Which
Darren, let me tell you this. I like to listen to the young people's view of that, and then kind of look at how it would have been seen in my day and time.
Oh, completely different. It wouldn't even got to that point in your time.
I'm just like what Glenn Beck said. I'm on the same page with his analysis of that, and that is this point about how my mother would have seen it and how those parents would have seen it back in the day. My mom would have had that conversation in at the question to me about why did it take an officer to come in and ask you to do what was.
Oh yeah, that's number one.
And it would never gotten to the officer in that day and time, because what led up to it was all of this noncompliance, and when the ultimate point of noncompliance, it brings about some physical intervention. Yeah, he's not going to just walk out the room, so to speak. So it's just like it's like I do hear that conversation about how the officer was wrong and how he shouldn't have done what he did, but we seem to be today in America. We start these narratives at the end of the process.
It is. That's what that's exactly. It's the end of it and not the root of the problem. Not really what. And unfortunately, we're dealing with a media who has been heavily biased, whether it's liberal or conservative. But you could probably say mainly liberal, very socialistic in different aspects. So with that being said. And this is one reason why I felt like even Karen Weaver was very good, because I thought emotionally and from a psychological standpoint, we have a lot of hurting kids who need help here in the public schools and just throughout the city. And it takes a woman's compassion a lot of times to deal with those issues. But no, you're absolutely right. I think from an aspect of parenting. I mean, your kids represent you, and there was something going on with the student clearly, but shouldn't have never got to the officer. And I think that's the real solution behind it. But also, a police officer knowing not to put his arm around a young girl is a problem too. I mean, because we can't be anti-abuse, domestic violence, and then allow a police officer who probably don't even have a whole lot of experience with African Americans dealing with this. And I know we don't want to talk about race, but the truth of the matter, we have too many breakdowns here where you have a police force that be primarily white, and they may have a lot of biases or different things involved, and those things can influence their judgments when they're in the field. Whereas we need to be more together as Americans. You know, we need to try to understand each other better, deal with each other better, and try to, again, having moral values at the center of everything, I think will alleviate all those problems.
Okay, well, time always runs out real quick when we're talking here at the studio, and it did this time as well. We want you out there in the listenership to join in the political process, because it can't work without you. And Darwin want to be watching you, or going to be watching you down the road, see what kind of things you're doing and coming up with, because there's always something exciting going on.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks again for coming in, and we will be in touch with all of you out there at allpointstv.com. Until that time, I want you to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dreams, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.